So today we are going to have Rocio Caroll here, the BIM manager for Kemp Brothers, and we're just going to be asking her a few questions and see how she can add value to your life or your career. So I guess the first question I want to ask you, Rocio, is like, how did you become a BIM manager?
Okay, well, my journey started a while back while I was at school. I studied architecture both in Mexico and at USC, and I graduated in 2006.
Okay.
But when I was on my third year of architecture, I did my first internship.
Okay.
And I wanted to learn how to build. And so I worked in construction, and I have worked in construction my entire career. I had never worked for an architectural firm. But BIM, or Building Information Modeling,
Yes.
it became that perfect niche for me,
Okay.
where I can apply my architectural skills while learning construction, and BIM gave me that opportunity.
Oh, nice.
So that it was very early in what we know BIM today. It was back in 2006. People used to call it 3D CAD. They didn't call it BIM. And so I was able to do, as an intern, the first coordination using not the technology we have today, but using Photoshop, believe it or not.
Wow.
So
cool.
just some overlays. When I graduated in 2006, I had the opportunity to attend Stanford, the Sci-Fi program, where I thought I was going to be trained how to use the software. And to my surprise, it was a very intellectual discussion on how this new paradigm was going to revolutionize construction.
Wow.
So there was people from different parts of the world, people from the architectural firms, general contractors, and the owner and the design team. The conversations were, how are we going to change our processes, our documentation, and how are we going to manage construction using this technology. We had a little bit of intro onto the modeling, but that is something that I have picked up over the years.
Wow, that's really cool. So like, was there a huge learning curve for you when you get started in BIM, or like, was it really easy?
It was a big learning curve, and it's not just for me, it was overall across the board.
Yeah.
What helped me was that I had learned how to do 3D modeling as part of my career, my schooling at USC. And so now it was just using those skills, but instead of modeling with the intent of creating a pretty picture, which I still do today, or try to, it was to figure out how things come together, and were they buildable, were there any constraints, and people at that time were still using the light table to overlay drawings, and there was a lot of resistance to be able to do it. So it was both a learning curve and the overcoming a huge change in the way we do things in both the AC industry.
Right, for sure. So I know, like, for you, you came from an architecture background, and a lot of the questions that I get asked is like, I'm an architect right now, can I become a BIM engineer or like a BIM manager? And then people who like studied civil engineering or like mechanical engineers, they want to transition over to BIM. Like, how would you like suggest like they get into BIM?
My suggestion is it doesn't matter what whether you are in the architectural industry or whether you are in the construction or the engineering. BIM is a very integral part, a component of the construction of the overall project, the overall life cycle, from design all the way to facility management. So at any phase within that project cycle, anyone can add value, and there's always a need for visualization, because people tend to interpret their scope or their responsibilities or their scope or their based on their specialty, right? But when you bring all those together, that's what makes BIM, or the platform of BIM, more value for a project, for an owner. At the end of the day, we are working towards one goal, whether it's architectural, engineer, or construction. It is create that customer satisfaction that will give you a return client.
That's true. That's true. So like, for someone who wants to get into BIM, like, what are the softwares that they have to start using, or like what would you say would be the first step for them?
So the most common software to model, because there's a software to model and there's another software to analyze. So for modeling, the basics will be AutoCAD, which allows you to do 2D drawings or a 3D. A little more difficult for the 3D, but there's that capability. Autodesk is the software,
company,
right? So they have AutoCAD. They have AutoCAD MEP for civil. There's the Revit component. There's Revit Architecture, Revit MEP. Now the systems are integrated with the Revit, typical Revit platform. But if you don't want to get into Autodesk or you want to just get started, you can just get SketchUp. And SketchUp may not be helpful for clash detection or coordination, but it will be it's a great platform to model constructability and in a very quick format and create visuals that communicate either the design intent, the conflicts, or the solutions.
Right. Okay, so when you say modeling, you mean like creating the models from scratch. Would you say that like creating a building, like a house, is a lot different from creating mechanical units or like electrical units?
Yes, it's a big difference.
Okay.
So that will be the systems.
Okay.
So if you want to create MEP components, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, there's already 3D models out there from the manufacturers that people tend to use, or they create their own. That will be what allow most of the trade partners, bigger firms do today. And so you put those into the building and you create. I mean, there's someone already created that component. You just bring it into the correct location. A house will be the architectural and structural. And those you can create in ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD's another platform. Or ArchiCAD, AutoCAD, and Revit. And then you bring all those components into a platform like Navisworks, where you can then create a clash report. What it does is collides the geometry and checks for intersections and highlights those areas as a clash, as a conflict. Obviously, if you have ductwork going through a wall, well, that's how you typically install it in the field, so that will not be a clash. However, if you have ductwork going through a shear wall, which is concrete and rebar, and there's no opening, then you will have a conflict that you want to pay attention to.
Nice. So speaking of clash detection, like how do you like document your clashes?
So the platform Navisworks allow you to document, mark up those clashes, and you want to always reference the documents, because on any project, even on the design build project, the contract documents is what has the validity. The models are not always 100% correct. And so as a BIM manager, you want to ensure that there's quality and the validity and and that the information that you are using for coordination matches those contract documents, because at the end of the day, we are liable based on the contract.
For sure. That's funny because like in the past when I was a BIM engineer, I do my clashes, but I will document them on like Google Sheets or like Excel, and it's just like really time consuming. So I heard like there's this new software, it's called BIM Track, and a lot of BIM engineers are using it. Have you used it before? I
have not used it, but I heard about it. The way I document the clashes with just Navisworks is I create viewpoints. I can generate reports, and I can take the time to manually, that's the way the old school, right? Manually grab each snippet and then create a document and then distribute. But Procore, which we use at Ken Brothers, it facilitates and expedites the process. So it automatically links the model to Procore. So all the viewpoints are exported directly from the model into Procore, and it creates an issues log that is automatically, it's distributed at the end of it, like your typical meeting minutes. It get distributed at the end of the meeting, and it's assigned to a specific person within a specific trade. And that is important. So it's not just to the general trade, but to a specific person. So that person is held responsible for the solution of the clash. And typically on a BIM coordination meeting, we discuss solutions. We not only discuss clashes, because they will be pointless. We need to come up with solutions many times the solution between two trades implicates a problem for a third one. So you want to have those type of conversations.
Wow, that's really cool. I've never heard that Procore could do something like that. Super cool.
Yeah.
So like, what would you, how would you like describe your day-to-day as a BIM manager?
What I typically do is, right now currently I'm working on 2 different projects. I'm working at a high school in Huntington Park, and I'm working on the McKinley, which is an elementary. So for the high school, I have 3 different buildings that I'm coordinating. So what I typically do is I go over I follow up on the minutes. If there's something that needs to be added to the model because it was not created, it was not modeled, or there's an area that I discovered by reviewing the documents that is critical and that it needs to be included. For example, an elevator. Then I will go in model, create that content, bring it into the Navis file, and then check for issues. I'll highlight it, I'll create the viewpoints, send it to Procore, and within Procore I can tag a specific detailer and say, hey, I know you're busy during your daily agenda, but take a look at this.
Wow.
And then I give them a phone call. I have separate coordination meetings from our typical coordination meeting, which happens once a week, just to make sure that we keep the process going, so that people are not waiting until that one day a week to look at last minute at the project. I have to make sure that I keep on top so that people can continue to review and update, and so that we finish our coordination in time for procurement and then construction. Because BIM has a very short window, when you look at the overall life cycle of a project, has a very short window of opportunity, and you don't want to miss that.
Wow, that's good. The expert, right? So like, what would you say is your biggest obstacle as a BIM manager?
I think that I would say an obstacle. I would say more like a challenge.
Yeah, challenge.
The challenge will be to have a very unequal level of experience within the detailers or within the trades. Typically the mechanical, electrical, plumbing are ahead of the curve. Oftentimes, depends on the size of the firm.
Okay.
Fire sprinklers tends to lag. Sometimes plumbing tends to lag.
Okay.
And so how do you keep everyone moving at the same pace can be challenging.
That's true.
That would be one. The other challenge is expectations.
Okay.
I find over and over and over again that managing expectations is very difficult among all the stakeholders. So you are not only as a BIM manager, I don't feel that your stakeholder or your client is, for example, in this case, LAUSD, but it's every single one of those firms, along with our internal firm, and at the end of the day, the people who are putting the items in place. So I believe that you have to plan with the end in mind, and so we're looking at clashes. You have to think ahead. So why will this look in construction sequence? How will this impact the schedule? Is this going to be a cost impact? Every decision that is made during coordination will have an impact in the field, both positive or negative.
That's true.
And so the superintendent may not be in this meeting. The project manager for mechanical may not be in this meeting. And so who makes the decision? Is the detailer has enough authority to make that decision? Is he empowered to make a decision? Or does that need to go out? So it's always great to have the architects and participating.
True.
Which they have been in this case. And that is very helpful, because as a BIM manager, I can ask a question, and then the PM for that particular trade can follow up with an RFI document, versus sending the document and then waiting for it.
True.
So I like to be ahead. I would like to ask a question within the meeting or even via email, and then have the trades confirmed with an RFI, so that you always have lags, but they will minimize and mitigate that waiting, that redundancy.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So like, as a BIM manager, do you are you always in the office, or like do you go to the site from time to time? Like, how do you describe your flexibility?
Lately I've been in the office. However, I think it is very important to go to the site. There's many conversations and meetings and discussions that happen on site that you don't get to experience from the office.
That's true.
So it's always important to be connected. So whether if it's not physically, it's the communication. Communication is such an important component for any industry.
Yeah, for sure.
But for our industry, we have so many people, so many moving pieces, so many decisions.
Exactly.
And they can create a domino effect if we're not careful.
That's true.
So.
That's true. Because I know like a lot of people, they're like working as a PE, for example, they're in the site, right? And then the reason why they want to be a BIM engineer or a BIM manager is because they want to be in the office. But this is basically telling you guys that like even as a BIM engineer, you still have to go out there in the field. Like
you have to learn.
Yeah.
How are you going to manage?
Yeah.
The coordination if you do not understand how it's put together in construction in the field? You have to understand. You have to be able to understand and be able to read the drawings. You have to read the general sheets. You have to know where to find information in the specs, because the contract documents, again, contract, right? The contract documents are those drawings, are those specifications. And as a general contractor, we're bound contractually to fulfill and build per specs and drawings. And so if you don't know what's going to be built or what else comes into that assembly, how are you going to manage? How are you going to tell the people in the field that what they're putting together is not correct? Or how are you going to have a conversation with an inspector when he comes and tells you that does not match the contract documents and you have to tear everything apart? So then it costs you time and money. Not only you, but the owner.
True.
And so you want to have that repeat client. You have to be able to provide value.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Wow. But then how do you like connect contract documents to the model? Because a lot of times like the contract documents is like bounded by what you actually built on site, but not in the virtual environment. You
have to do quality control. Okay. You have to QC the model, because we do get models from the design team. But like I said before, those models are not created for constructability. Those models are created to generate drawings.
True.
And they have errors. And so as a BIM manager, I'm not only coordinating the trades, but I'm also reviewing the design.
Okay.
And making sure, because many times, again, having an architectural background, many times there's 2D line work added to a 3D object.
Oh.
So it means not everything is modeled.
True.
So you may have a wall that says, for example, it's a 6-inch wall or a 7-inch wall. But these components of that wall have studs, have different layers. And when you are bringing another system or something running through it, you want to know what else is there.
That's true.
That may impact it. Because I could say, just move the door, for example, a couple inches, but then maybe it's an ADA compliance. It's a restroom, and I need to have certain distance away from the door. And then I have, there's so many elements.
That's true.
That say I'm going to be a BIM manager so that I can stay at the office. Well, could be a banker. You know what I mean? You need to be able to. It's a huge responsibility. You need to be able to understand, know the contract, know the drawings, know where to find things on the specs, and how to link from one drawing to the next. How to link architectural to structural to mechanical to plumbing to fire. But I don't want to discourage you. I want to encourage you that whatever area you are working, whether it's architectural engineer or construction, and even as an owner's rep, that you understand how to read, where to find the information, that you look up and follow up at the questions that have been asked, and how the answers impact what you're currently coordinating.
That's true. So like for all the BIM engineers out there, like what advice would you give them?
For the other
or let's just say for people who want to be BIM engineers.
I'm going to give the same advice I was given when I started.
Okay.
And that is be like a sponge. Be like a sponge. Absorb and ask questions, and don't just focus on your small world.
Right.
Go explore. There's other things, there's other forces, there's other areas that are impacting the overall life cycle of a project. And whatever you do has meaning.
That's true. Yeah.
Whether you're in quality control and you're just checking documents, there's a way of learning. There's always that desire. If you desire to always continue to learn, that you will continue to grow. And so it doesn't really matter where you start as long as you start.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. So, like, what would you say is a typical BIM career? Like, they start off as a BIM engineer, and then they be a BIM manager, and then what's next?
They can start as a BIM engineer, but someone who just starts as a BIM engineer and then is never in the field will not have that experience. And to be a better BIM engineer, you want to be able to have that flexibility and go and be an estimator, go field engineer, learn about the schedule, learn about the contracts, so do some buyouts, be in charge of submittals.
Right.
What else? Sales,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, we are all
Salespeople.
Safety, because we are all responsible for safety.
True.
And go spend some time talking to the designers. Sometimes we have deadlines, and we think that, and we, as a BIM manager, I hear a lot of complaints about, the architect is not answering this RFI, and they're not giving us the latest documents. But many, like us, they have resources, and they may be spread very thin, and that's why they're not able to provide answers, or they may be waiting on somebody else. So what's the hurdle? What's the constraint? And so when you start learning those things, your knowledge become more extent, and then your decision making will be more, I don't say precise, but will be closer to, if you want to say someone to, you do this, don't do that, or wait or not wait, those decisions will have a valid backup. And why not? If you're in the field, go talk to the inspector. What are they looking for?
Yeah.
If you plan with the end of mind, if you know what the inspector is going to be looking for at the time of that assembly being put in place, then you know what to look for when you're coordinating.
Yeah.
And you're most likely to catch a lot more issues, or see a lot more that is not clearly shown on a 2D drawing, and be able to think ahead. And don't wait to the last minute when it will cost you time and money.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for construction, time and money is of the essence, right? It's like the most important thing in the entire project. So I guess bonus question, what would you give 20-year-old Rocio the advice?
This is what I will give the 20-year-old of today.
Yeah.
The youth today have a lot of access to technology.
Okay.
They're very good at assimilating new tools and put them into place, which someone who is a baby boomer may be less reluctant to accept change and to embrace technology. So that 20-year-old could be the energy for that baby boomer. And it can be the liaison between the knowledge of that baby boomer and the technology, and be that glue.
Right.
And if he can facilitate it, John Maxwell says, if you help others get what they need, they will help you get what you want. Those baby boomers have experience. A 20-year-old has the ability to use technology. So why don't you exchange that ability? Why don't you exchange that energy? Why don't you change that desire to learn and go tap into those people who have the experience in the architecture, engineering, and construction, and in exchange help them with the technology and integrate both and make a successful project out of it.
Right. That's awesome. So Rocio is also doing John Maxwell on the side, right? She's a part of the leadership team,
Yes.
like a founding member, and she goes to a conference every year to participate and build her leadership, I guess. Yeah. So well, thank you so much for coming over.
Thank you.
Really happy to have you here. And I do have a gift for you though, because you've been asking me for surprises, right? Wait. Okay. So, as part of being on this channel, here's a gift card for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so you can treat yourself to a burrito.
I appreciate it, and I thank you for the invitation, and I hope I can add value.
Man, I'm
Yeah,
so
thank you.
tired. Sorry.
It's okay.